Hi, I'm Batyar Sanova and you're watching A News. Let's see the top stories shaping our world. Israeli strikes hit Yemen's capital in retaliation for earlier Houthi attacks. World leaders send messages of support on Ukraine's Independence Day. UK anti-migrant activists protest outside hotel housing asylum seekers. Israeli airstrikes have hit the Yemeni capital Sana'a late Sunday, targeting energy infrastructure controlled by Iran-backed Houthi rebels. The strikes came just days after the Houthis claimed to have fired a missile toward Israel, escalating tensions in the region. The strikes killed 6 people and injured 86 in a final toll, a Houthi health ministry spokesperson said on X. The Israeli military said the targets included a military compound housing the presidential palace, 2 power plants and a fuel storage site. The strikes are the latest in over a year of direct attacks and counter-strikes between Israel and Houthi militants in Yemen, part of a spillover from the war in Gaza. The United Nations has confirmed famine in Gaza for the first time in Middle Eastern history, with more than 500,000 people facing starvation. Palestinian officials say more than 280 people, including children, have already died from hunger.
A humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza is deepening. With food, fuel and aid sharply restricted, families are being pushed to the brink of starvation. Since March 2nd, when the first phase of a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas ended, Israel has tightened its blockade on Gaza, sharply reducing the entry of food, fuel and humanitarian aid.
I want to get food for my children so I can feed them. Making a living is hard, as you can see. The crossings are closed. There's nothing we can do. The situation is difficult. The economic situation we're in is hard. I come here to feed my children. I come early in the morning to stand in line until noon.
Since the collapse of the ceasefire earlier this month, conditions have deteriorated. A new UN report confirms famine in Gaza, the first such declaration in the Middle East since the system was established more than 2 decades ago.
Be in no doubt that this is irrefutable testimony. It is a famine, the Gaza famine. It is a famine that we could have prevented if we had been allowed. Yet food stacks up at borders because of systematic obstruction by Israel. It is a famine within a few hundred meters of food.
Israel dismissed the findings as false and biased, saying the IPC had based its survey on partial data largely provided by Hamas, which did not take into account a recent influx of food. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the report was an outright lie. According to Palestinian health authorities, more than 280 people, including children, have already died from starvation and malnutrition. The UN warns that hundreds of thousands more remain at risk, with preventable deaths expected to rise unless access to aid is urgently restored.
Now to Eastern Europe, where Ukraine marked its Independence Day with strong international backing as leaders from across the world reaffirmed their support. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney and US Special Envoy Keith Kellogg joined the celebrations.
Ukraine marks the 34th anniversary of its independence. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky led Independence Day ceremony in Kyiv's Maidan Square on Sunday, observing a moment of silence for those lost in the ongoing war with Russia.
And every day we're returning more and more of this war to where it came from, into the Russian sky and onto the Russian land. And with every step of this war there, with pressure on Russia, with their real losses, we know that peace for Ukraine is getting closer.
Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney and US Special Envoy Keith Kellogg joined the celebrations. Zelensky called Carney's first visit as Prime Minister on Ukraine's most important national holiday a big honor Carney reaffirmed Canada's continued support for Ukraine and stressed the need for stronger deterrence against Russia amid talks on Western security guarantees. World leaders, including US President Donald Trump, King Charles III, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, Pope Leo, French President Emmanuel Macron, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, Chinese President Xi Jinping and the others extended congratulations and expressed solidarity through letters and social media messages. In Kyiv, Zelensky also attended a defence forum alongside Canadian Prime Minister Carney, where the focus was on expanding military cooperation with allied nations. The event showcased Ukraine's advancements in weapons and defence equipment production and was attended by senior officials from Denmark, Sweden, Britain, and the Baltic states. Marking Carney's visit, Ukraine and Canada signed a landmark agreement on joint defence production. Ukrainian Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal and Canadian Defence Minister David McGuinty signed the document in the presence of Zelensky and Carney. The agreement, accompanied by Canada's announcement of a military aid package worth more than $700 million, aims to boost bilateral defence and industrial cooperation, expand production capacities in both countries, and ensure greater stability in defence supplies. Beyond Kyiv, Ukraine's Independence Day was marked across Europe. Members of the Ukrainian diaspora gathered in Warsaw.
We don't have high hopes that everything will work out and there will be peace, because Putin is only waiting to gain time from Trump to take over more of our territories. I see what is happening in Kharkiv. They kill people every day, our children, and we cannot come back. There is no hope for peace.
In Paris, several hundred people marched through the city to call for Ukraine's sovereignty to be upheld in any future peace deal.
I cried a little bit this morning because I thought of all the losses and incredibly high price we're paying for this independence. But at the same time, I'm incredibly grateful that we have it.
The Eiffel Tower in Paris was illuminated in blue and yellow, the colours of Ukraine's flag, as onlookers draped in Ukrainian banners sang and photographed the landmark shimmering in solidarity.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said on Sunday that a group of nations, including UN Security Council members, should act as guarantors of Ukraine's security. He noted that President Vladimir Putin had discussed the issue with US President Donald Trump, referencing the failed 2022 Istanbul talks. Putin is demanding Ukraine cede the Donbas region, abandon NATO ambitions, and bar Western troops from its territory.
On that one, but as regards the security guarantees for Ukraine, those principles proposed by Ukrainian delegation, I underline this once again, they provided for creation a group of guarantors. This group containing of permanent members of the Security Council, Russia, US, China, UK, and France. Plus, they mentioned Germany, Turkey, and any other country which would be interested to join this group of guarantors. And guarantors would be guaranteeing the security of Ukraine, which must be neutral, which must be non-aligned with any military bloc, and which must be non-nuclear.
Now to Britain, where immigration tensions are spilling onto the streets. Anti-migrant protests flared again this weekend, this time outside a hotel in Epping, east of London. It follows a wave of demonstrations across the country, with the government now under pressure to reform the asylum system and reduce its reliance on costly hotels.
Anti-migrant protesters gathered outside the Bell Hotel in Epping on Sunday, waving British flags and holding placards. The hotel has become a flashpoint after a court ruling last week ordered the removal of asylum seekers from the site. The government plans to appeal the decision. The protest came just a day after police were forced to separate rival groups across several English cities, including Bristol, Liverpool, Newcastle and Hawley. Mounted officers were deployed in Bristol's Castle Park, while in Liverpool, 11 arrests were made for offences including assault and disorderly conduct. In Hawley, around 200 anti-immigration demonstrators clashed with roughly 50 counter-protesters from Stand Up to Racism. Prime Minister Keir Starmer's Labour government has pledged to phase out hotel use and accelerate asylum decisions. On Sunday, ministers unveiled plans for a new fast-track appeals process, overseen by an independent panel of adjudicators. The aim is to reduce a backlog of more than 100,000 cases, including 51,000 appeals, where applicants are currently waiting over a year for a ruling. Local councils are also considering legal action similar to the case in Epping, while Reform UK leader Nigel Farage has vowed mass deportations if he comes to power. For now, immigration remains one of Britain's most divisive political issues, and one that continues to spill out onto the streets.
Moving to southern Europe, where hundreds of migrants were rescued off the Canary Islands on Sunday. Spanish Coast Guards brought 248 people, including a newborn baby, children and several women, safely to Arguineguín port of Gran Canaria. Some required medical attention after the journey. The Interior Ministry says migrant arrivals to the Canaries are down nearly 47% this year compared to 2024, when the route saw a record number of crossings. The Atlantic Passage from West Africa remains one of the most dangerous migration routes, with rough seas often overturning the fragile boats used by migrants. We shall return after the short break. Stay with us.
Welcome to Afghanistan in the summer of 2025.
It's been 4 years since the Taliban came back to power in Afghanistan.
The biggest achievement, obviously, is ending the occupation of Afghanistan. We will strive towards, after 50 years of conflict, to turn Afghanistan into a hub of cooperation amongst the many stakeholders.
When the previous Western-backed government collapsed, thousands in the country scrambled, fleeing in fear of persecution.
دولت فقط می تقاضا را داریم که کم کار زیاد کنه، جوانا در کار مشغول شوند دیگه شوند تا اصلا مجبور نشن برن به دیگه جای مسافرت کنن یا اوج سختی ها را طی کنن.
Mostly maybe the media's telling something about the Afghanistan, about the fight, but they shouldn't believe such a thing.
There are projects to kickstart the economy in the works. The Turkmenistan-Afghanistan-Pakistan-India gas pipeline is one of them.
We're also working diligently with our counterparts within Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan and Turkey to realize the Lapis-Lazuli route.
We're here at the Port Torgundi in Afghanistan's western province of Herat. This is one of two starting points of the Lapis-Lazuli corridor, the other one being in the north of the country.
بنابراین هر قدر ترانزیت یا مسیر راه‌های انتقالی بیشتر شه، این موثرتر برای اقتصاد کشور.
We are ready to welcome everyone to come to Gabela and to make unforgettable memories.
Welcome to Gabala rafting.
This territory is the most important place in our history. Our ancestors lived here 2,000 years ago, and they had here amazing culture, amazing civilization.
There's something for everyone here. This place is the largest amusement park in Azerbaijan.
Our guests love to have meal in this atmosphere.
Yeah.
You know, you see you're in nature,
look at this,
in the forest, and the good food.
It's 6 tons, 579 liters.
And it's a lot of wine.
And biggest cask in the world.
Bandar is not just a holiday destination. It's a symbol of Azerbaijan's growing tourism potential.
The doors are open. Welcome to Gabala, Azerbaijan.
Welcome back to A News. Turning to the Russia-Ukraine war. As the war in Ukraine continues its grim course, with the Russian forces grinding forward in Donetsk and Luhansk, the parameters of a possible settlement remain elusive. President Donald Trump has floated the idea of territorial adjustment or swapping of territories, though he insists any final decision lies with Kiev. President Zelensky, however, has reiterated with unwavering clarity that no surrender of land is conceivable. EU leaders, including the bloc's High Representative Kaja Kallas, have warned sternly against any land for peace arrangement, describing it as a perilous gambit that risks rewarding aggression. To help us unpack these developments, I'm joined by Nikola Mikovic, journalist and political analyst who follows Russian and Eastern European affairs closely. He joins us now from Belgrade, Serbia. Nikola, welcome to the program.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Mr. Mikovic, 4 days ago, Russia launched its largest missile barrage in weeks. President Zelensky suggested the strikes were meant to sabotage diplomatic channels. What, in your view, is Moscow's tactical objective right now?
I think Russia is just trying to achieve at least some of its goals in Ukraine, because it became quite clear that it cannot achieve all of its goals. I'm talking about goals that Russian President Vladimir Putin declared in February and March 2022. So right now what Russia is trying to do is to force Kiev to at least recognize the Russian incorporation of the Donbass into the Russian Federation, which I don't think will happen because Ukraine is not willing to do that. And Ukrainian officials repeatedly stated that they will never recognize Russia's actions, Russia's annexation of Crimea and other regions into the Russian Federation. So Moscow will continue fighting the war, although that does not mean that it will win the war. Now, that does not mean that Kiev will win the war either, because what we have right now is a pretty difficult position for both sides, because they both lack manpower, and reports suggest that Ukraine lacks weapons. It will get air defense systems and offensive weapons from the United States and European countries, but it's rather questionable if it will be enough to win the war. I think, and I repeatedly stated that Washington and its European allies want Ukraine to continue fighting and to survive, but not necessarily to defeat the Russian Federation. On the other hand, that does not mean that they want Moscow to achieve its goals. So it's a very complex situation, and I don't see the peaceful resolution here on the horizon.
So reports indicate that Russia may be willing to freeze the conflict in exchange for formal control over Donetsk, where it already holds about 70% of the territory. What exactly would such a freeze look like in practical terms?
It would look like Minsk agreements, so that would be effectively Minsk III agreement, which means that positional warfare would go on. There will be shelling and drone attacks and maybe even missile attacks. There probably wouldn't be any major offensive military operations, but that ceasefire, or however they portray it, would not end the conflict. It would only freeze it. And I agree that now the Kremlin is trying to freeze the conflict. That's what US President Donald Trump is also trying to do, but it's not easy because Ukraine is not interested in such an outcome, and Ukraine, as we know, is firmly backed by European countries, including the United Kingdom, and they repeatedly stated that they will continue funding and arming Ukraine as long as Kiev is willing to fight. So at this point, it's difficult for me to imagine a ceasefire deal. I think in the midterm, Russia will capture the remaining parts of the Donbass. It might take a year or two, maybe, but I think towns and cities like Slavyansk, Kramatorsk, and so on will be under Russian control eventually. They will be ruined completely, of course. But even if Russia captures the entire Donbass, it will still not achieve its goals in Ukraine, because Ukraine, as we know, will never recognize it, and that was one of the Kremlin's demands. It wanted Kiev to recognize formally Russia's incorporations of those regions into the Russian Federation, which, as I said, will not happen.
Mr. Mikovic, how do you interpret President Trump's suggestion of territorial swaps? Was it a trial balloon for negotiations or more of a rhetorical provocation?
Yeah, I think it was a rhetorical provocation because there's nothing to swap, actually. It would be some territorial exchange, something Ukrainian for something Ukrainian. That's from Kiev's perspective, right? Because Russia controls around 20% of Ukrainian territory. Ukraine currently does not occupy any Russian territory. It did last year have some parts of Russia's Kursk region under its control, but not anymore. So from Kiev's perspective, there is no point engaging in such arrangements because Ukraine would then have to de facto give up on parts of its territory, which Kiev is not willing to do. So Trump tried to do something similar, I believe 5 years ago, when it comes to Serbia and Kosovo, and they were negotiating a land swap, but then that process failed. So I think that will be the outcome here as well. There will be no land swap. Ukraine is not interested. And the Kremlin, as I said, will just continue capturing Ukrainian territory in the Donbass, and it will be a slow and very painful process for Russia because it's suffering heavy losses. And those are merely tactical gains because strategically Russia has not achieved its goals.
So J.D. Vance has argued that Russia no longer seeks to impose a puppet regime in Kiev, but instead accepts Ukraine's post-war sovereignty. How credible is this claim, and how should policymakers interpret it?
Well, I think they gave up on that ambition a long time ago. Even Sergei Lavrov recently said that Russia does not want Kiev to declare Russian language the second official state language in Ukraine, which was one of the initial Russian goals and demands. I think the policymakers in Moscow are fully aware that they cannot have a puppet government in Kiev, which is necessary if they want to demilitarize and denazify Ukraine, which is what they proclaimed as one of their goals in February 2022. So that's not going to happen because Russia does not have the capacity to do that, nor does it have a political will, because in order to have a puppet government in Kiev, Moscow would have to mobilize a couple of million men and to launch another large-scale offensive aiming to capture Kiev, which would be extremely difficult, and there is no political will in Moscow to do that. And as a result, they will continue fighting this kind of war, so making small tactical gains in the Donbass, where Ukrainian forces are ready and waiting, while Kiev remains safe, except when it comes to Russian missile and drone attacks. And the war will continue, unfortunately. As I said, the peace is not on the horizon, and at this point, neither Moscow nor Kiev are willing to sign any ceasefire or peace deal. I think peace deal under the current circumstances is virtually impossible, because in order to reach a lasting peace, one of the two parties involved in this conflict will have to surrender, basically. Not formally, it won't have to formally sign a capitulation, but it will have to de facto recognize that it suffered a defeat and that it can no longer fight. And that's not the case, because both countries can fight. For the past 3 years, we've been listening to a narrative that Ukrainian military is about to collapse, that its front line is about to collapse. Ukraine lacks manpower, it cannot have enough men to fight, which is, as we know, is not true, because Ukraine does have manpower enough. It does face significant challenges, although it managed to mobilize enough men to fight. And on the other hand, there were reports that Russia is running out of missiles, drones, tanks, and so on, which is also not true, because as we can see, Russia continues conducting military operations in southeastern Ukraine. And both sides do have a capacity to fight, and that's why the war will unfortunately go on.
Nikola Mikovic, thank you very much for your insights and analysis. We greatly appreciate your time and perspective on these critical developments. Thanks a lot. After the break, we'll look at the key stories shaping the region. Stay tuned.
Hello, I'm Orkun Amashov. Welcome to Dialogue of Civilizations. No man is an island entire of itself. Our true connection as species go far beyond digital technology. In this exciting new series, I'll be exploring a vast and fascinating history of connections between civilizations and revealing secret bonds that have helped societies, cultures, and religions peacefully coexist. Join me and let's explore together.
On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption.
Welcome back to A News. We are going to take a closer look at the key stories shaping the region. Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan met with his Egyptian counterpart Badr Abdulati on Monday in Jeddah on the sidelines of an extraordinary meeting of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation Council of Foreign Ministers. The two discussed bilateral ties and regional developments as Fidan prepares to chair the OIC session addressing Israel's ongoing assault on Gaza, which has killed more than 62,600 Palestinians since October 2023. Turkey's First Lady Emine Erdogan has sent a letter to Melania Trump, the wife of US President Donald Trump. In her letter, she called for the same humanitarian concern shown for Ukraine to also be extended to the crisis in Gaza. Emine Erdogan noted that in Gaza, a child loses their life every 45 minutes and that the identities of thousands of children cannot even be determined. She described this as the most severe genocide of our time. The First Lady also urged Melania Trump to send a letter to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, stressing the importance of such a move. Emine Erdogan added that while it's already too late for thousands of children, there is still hope for more than 1 million children in Gaza who have survived. Turkey's largest warship, the amphibious assault ship TCG Anadolu, led a naval parade through the Istanbul Strait on Sunday as part of the Technofest Blue Homeland event. After reaching Dolmabahce Palace, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan saluted the fleet. The event highlights Turkey's naval capabilities ahead of Technofest Blue Homeland activities on August 30th and 31st at the Istanbul Naval Shipyard, which will feature exhibitions, VR experiences, commando demonstrations, boat races and ship design workshops. Japan is strengthening its partnership with Kazakhstan by providing financial aid to support those affected by nuclear testing and by commuting to deepen economic cooperation between the two countries. During the first official visit of Japan's Foreign Minister Takeshi Iwaya to Astana, key agreements were reached to boost trade, investment and collaboration in strategic sectors. Our correspondent Fariza Kalimurzana brings the details.
Japan will provide Kazakhstan with $7.4 million in aid for victims of nuclear testing and is set to deepen its economic cooperation with the country. This announcement came during the official visit of Japanese Foreign Minister Takeshi Iwaya to Astana, his first visit to Kazakhstan in this role. Following talks with Kazakhstan's Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs Murat Nurtliu, both sides agreed to strengthen trade and economic ties through increased investment, expanded exports and joint projects in strategic sectors. Japan is currently among Kazakhstan's top 10 foreign investors, having contributed over $9 billion in direct investment to date. Last year, bilateral trade approached $2 billion, and the Kazakh side believes there is strong potential to build on this figure. Key areas for future cooperation include the export of non-ferrous and rare earth metals. Kazakhstan supplies 22 of the 32 critical raw materials Japan needs for its green transition. As a result, partnerships are being explored between Kazakhstan's Tauken Samruk and Japan's Oil, Gas and Metals National Corporation. Transport infrastructure also was a key topic during the talks. Japan has pledged support to digitalize customs procedures at the port of Aktau, which is part of the Trans-Caspian International Transport Route. The two sides also agreed to speed up preparations for the Central Asia plus Japan summit, which was postponed last year due to an earthquake in Japan. The meeting is now expected to take place as soon as possible. In addition, a direct flight between Almaty and Tokyo is set to begin in 2026, a move expected to boost business and cultural ties between the two countries. Also, Kazakhstan's Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Murat Nurtliu announced that discussions took place regarding the organization of an official visit by Kazakhstan's President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev to Japan, expected to take place before the end of this year. From Almaty, Kazakhstan, Fariza Kalimurzina, A News.
A top United Nations counter-terrorism official has issued a stark warning about ISIS Khorasan, better known as ISIS-K. She says the group continues to pose a serious threat not only inside Afghanistan, but also across Europe and Central Asia. Our correspondent Tamim Bahis has more from Kabul.
Natalia Gurman, Executive Director of the UN Counterterrorism Committee, told the Security Council that ISIS-K is actively recruiting members and raising money through online propaganda campaigns. Her remarks come even as Afghanistan's Taliban rulers, who call themselves the Islamic Emirate, insist that ISIS has been defeated in the country. But security experts say the reality is more complex. ISIS-K formed in 2015 as the Afghan branch of the so-called Islamic State has carried out some of the deadliest bombings in the region. The group emerged in eastern Afghanistan and pledged allegiance to ISIS global leadership. Unlike the Taliban, whose focus is on ruling Afghanistan, ISIS-K aims to establish transnational Islamic caliphate. The ideological divide has made the two groups bitter rivals. Since the Taliban's takeover in 2021, ISIS-K has repeatedly targeted Taliban forces, government offices and civilians in deadly attacks. The United Nations say the danger now is that ISIS-K could expand beyond Afghanistan's borders through its digital networks and regional links, raising fears of new violence far outside the country. For now, the Taliban claim victory over ISIS-K, but the UN warns the group remains resilient and very much alive. This is Tamim Bahis in Kabul for A News.
Georgia is not sitting back while Armenia and Azerbaijan edge closer to a Zangezur corridor that could sideline Tbilisi's transit influence. Instead, it's striking fast with an international tender now open for supervising the new Batumi-Sarpi highway.
The South Caucasus is entering a new era. Armenia and Azerbaijan are close to a final peace deal which could open the Zangezur corridor, a direct link from Azerbaijan to Turkey. For Georgia, that's a challenge. If cargo moves through Armenia, Tbilisi risks losing part of its role as the region's main gateway. But Georgia is keen to remain a relevant player in regional connectivity by investing in infrastructure projects. The latest step, a new highway between Batumi and Sarpi on the Turkish border. The plan is ambitious: 11 kilometers of road, a tunnel stretching 7.6 kilometers, a bridge almost 1.5 kilometers long, and plus 2 interchanges and coastal protections. Funded by the Asian Development Bank and the state budget, the project is now open for international tenders. Supervision will last 4 years with proposals due by September 2025. The stakes are high. Batumi is Georgia's tourist capital, the heart of the Black Sea coast. A faster, safer road means more trade, more visitors, and more regional ties. So while new corridors may shift the balance in the South Caucasus, Georgia is making sure it remains vital. It's Nini Nikolaishvili reporting from Tbilisi, A News.
After the break, we'll look at how the new Trump route could reshape East-West connectivity. Stay with us.
Welcome to Afghanistan in the summer of 2025.
It's been 4 years since the Taliban came back to power in Afghanistan.
The biggest achievement, obviously, is ending the occupation of Afghanistan. We will strive towards, after 50 years of conflict, to turn Afghanistan into a hub of cooperation amongst the many stakeholders.
When the previous Western-backed government collapsed, thousands in the country scrambled, fleeing in fear of persecution.
دولت فقط می تقاضا را داریم که کم کار زیاد کنه، جوانا در کار مشغول شوند دیگه شوند تا اصلا مجبور نشن برن به دیگه جای مسافرت کنن یا اوج سختی ها را طی کنن.
Mostly maybe the media's telling something about the Afghanistan, about the fight, but they shouldn't believe such a thing.
There are projects to kickstart the economy in the works. The Turkmenistan-Afghanistan-Pakistan-India gas pipeline is one of them.
We're also working diligently with our counterparts in Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan, and Turkey to realize the Lapis Lazuli route.
We're here at the Port Torgundi in Afghanistan's western province of Herat. This is one of two starting points of the Lapis Lazuli corridor, the other one being in the north of the country.
بنابراین هر قدر ترانزیت یا مسیر راه‌های انتقالی بیشتر شه، این موثرتر برای اقتصاد کشور.
With a long history behind, China's rapid growth is reshaping the world's economy and alliances.
既不能让中美脱钩，也不能够让中国在全球产供链里面失去它的。
We no longer have a unipolar world anymore.
中间走廊呢，这个是这几年中国跟中亚国家跟南高加索国家比较热议的一个话题。这个中间走廊呢
，China is first manufacturing nation in the world. Europe needs China's goods.
From here, rail lines and trade routes stretch westward through Central Asia and the South Caucasus, linking China with Europe.
目前我们从西安发出的这个中欧专列，能够覆盖“一带一路”沿线40多个国家和地区。
Our strategy and vision in Azerbaijan is in Azerbaijan for Azerbaijan.
It's a journey that is transforming not only China, but the way the world moves together. Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
Hello, I'm Orkun Amashov. Welcome to Dialogue of Civilizations. No man is an island entire of itself. Our true connections as species go far beyond digital technology. In this exciting new series, I'll be exploring a vast and fascinating history of connections between civilizations and revealing secret bonds that have helped societies, cultures, and religions peacefully coexist. Join me and let's explore together.
Welcome back to A News. Now we turn to a critical question for regional connectivity. Is Georgia about to lose its exclusive status as a transit country between East and West? with the emerging Trump route for international peace and prosperity, a project redefining East-West transport corridors. The geopolitical map of transit and trade could undergo profound change. Against the backdrop of U.S.-China rivalry, the stakes for the South Caucasus and Georgia in particular have never been higher. To help us unpack these issues, I'm joined by Murad Muradov, Deputy Director of the Topchubashov Center and political analyst Vakhtang Maysaya. Mr. Muradov and Vakhtang Maysaya, welcome and thank you for being with us.
Good evening. Hello, thank you very much.
Hello.
I would like to greet to my colleagues and to you. Thank you very much for having me with you.
Thanks. Mr. Muradov, let's start with you. What does the Trump route for international peace and prosperity actually mean in practical terms for the East-West corridor?
Well, actually, the idea behind the project is not so much something completely new. So the plans to build a so-called new corridor and respective infrastructure in the South Caucasus have been around for a long time, for a few years already. The thing is that with the US-backed initiative, there is a real chance now to overcome the problem which stemmed from Armenia's unwillingness to open its borders on the conditions that Azerbaijan considers fair and just. As you know, I mean, for a few years since 2020, Armenian side refused to provide unimpeded access to Azerbaijan. And so with the nomination of President Donald Trump, I think a formula which can somehow satisfy both sides has been finally found. And it just makes the corridor and maybe in general the completion of the East-West network much more realistic. Of course, each side now has different objectives. So since for Azerbaijan, it's first of all, I mean, this project ensures access to Nakhchivan. For Armenia, it's a chance to finally reach peace, at least for the government, which seems to be genuinely interested in a peace deal. And for the US, it's also an opportunity to enter South Caucasus and potentially Central Asia, and also to somehow contain China's active strategy for spreading its influence westward.
Mr. Maysaya, why has Georgia historically enjoyed such an exclusive transit status, and what are the factors that could now undermine that position?
Well, thank you very much for your questions. I would like to mention that Georgia always have just about a good geopolitical fortune, just about being like a crossroading, connecting East and West, having about just about being as a central pillar between the two seas, Caspian and Black Sea. Of course, we are a coastal just about country, and of course, we have like more opportunities to provide these maritime trade connections between the just regions like Central Asia, Caspian, and Black Sea areas. And this it's a more just about considering from that stance. Second, Georgia also considering to is like just about a very corner center in connecting about north and south, not only just east and west, but west and east, but also north, south, and southeast. So this is about the cornerstone of this geoeconomic just about location of Georgia. However, just about having considering about the Trump road, which nowadays defined by according to the Washington agreements, I would say that Georgia will not be a loser. Anyway, we will be a winner. First of all, it will be just about stimulus, additional one. It will be just about not a zero game, but it will be like a some game, like not zero sum, but it will be some gain for whole just about South Caucasus region, which main actors are Georgia, Azerbaijan, and Armenia. All three actors should be just about a winner and also just gain quite a great benefits, not only geopolitical, geostrategic, or first of all, geoeconomic benefits, because these trade routes, which also been connected with crossing by the Georgia, like Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan, Baku-Tbilisi-Erzurum, Tbilisi-Baku-Kars railway, just about routes. And of course, the same also just rests with these Trump roads configurations, which yet have to be just developed and built and promoted. I guess these both just about routes will be just about getting more supplementary to each other, not just about detrimental to each other. It's my personal view. I will say that about just about main great biggest geopolitical route connecting about China with Europe and China with the United States, about one belt and one road and one just about belt, just this geoeconomic project. I only one way to just shipping all these cargoes from China to the east directions, west directions, just only link with about middle corridor, or we can say central corridor. Neither nor just about northern corridor, neither southern corridor are to be active, and all cargo should be just about getting through to this central or middle just about corridor area, crossing about Central Asia, Black Caspian Basin, South Caucasus, and go to where Turkey to the European directions. And I guess all cargoes are being main consumer is to be neither Eurasian, Central Eurasia area like Russia, neither just about Afghanistan or Iran, about this so-called southern corridor, only central corridor. Central, how we can say also middle corridor will be main just about land just about locutor, which absolutely getting all cargoes through these just areas. And I guess which all cargoes, about 80% of the cargoes transcending from the China to the European directions will be just been exploding and even just about being passed throughout this main corridor. And I guess the Azerbaijan and Georgian two just about waves will be quite sufficiently enough, that be sufficiently just about to be transited all the cargoes to the one directions, which will be just more centered in the cars. I guess the cars will be like a main transit hub or just about transit economic or transport hub, just connecting recruited about Azerbaijan routes into this area. I guess considering all these just prosperities for the nearest future, I guess the Georgian and Azerbaijan, as well as just Armenia, that will be just about biggest consumers, and of course will be just the beneficials and beneficial actors of this transit route development cases. Doesn't matter, it will be just a Trump road or just about Georgian, we can say Georgian road.
So, Mr. Muradov, in your opinion, how do you see the Trump route as a complementary corridor to Georgia's existing transit role, or as a rival that could marginalize Tbilisi? What's your opinion?
Well, I believe that in the light of the growing attention to the middle corridor, I mean, by various powers and by various, let's say, big economists, it's not a rival. It's rather a complementary route, and especially given the low capacity, which has been already cited by actually many experts and by economic actors. I mean, low capacity of the available ways, both roads and railways, which run from Azerbaijan through Georgia. So, as you might know, so recently there have been expansion works on the Baku-Tbilisi cars, which is supposed to restart soon. It suggests the reality. The demand in the coming years is set to constantly exceed available capacity, and which has already shown itself in Alat seaport, by the way. And another dimension is the transit of oil and gas from Central Asian countries to the West. And recently, for example, Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan have been working on the Baku-Supsa oil pipeline, which for a while has been dysfunctional. And due to the fact that there's simply no spare capacity in the southern gas corridor and other or Baku-Tbilisi or the available pipelines. And if this project gets successful, so Kazakhstan will start to transit and significant part of its oil to Europe through Supsa pipeline. And I think the same goes to the Volby pipeline, which may be constructed through this Trump corridor, if everything goes well. So it will simply add new volumes. And I think recent accumulation of contact between Baku and Ashgabat, and also the trilateral format, Baku, Tashkent, Ashgabat, suggests that building a gas pipeline from Afghanistan, can finally become a reality after years and years of negotiations. And in this case, of course, we'll need new capacities. And corridor can be a perfect chance to build them.
And Mr. Maisaya, let's continue with you. How does Russia view these new East-West projects, and does Moscow's stance affect Georgia's strategic leverage?
Yes, the good question. Thank you very much. I think so. The Russian just considering to be a rival to its own North-South geoeconomic project, which also Russia wanted to more develop and more put in contradictory to the American project, geoeconomic project, connecting about West-South project, which also just will be just about more competitive, just about competitive just project toward the Russians one. First case. Second, Russian also just having considered about just a main intrusion to the area, Turkey and United States with its direct financial investment projects, and of course it's just about companies, including private military companies, also consider from the geostrategical just about very absolute against Russian interests, about military interests. That's why Russia also just tried to reinforce its military forces in Gyumri military just base, and of course try to more create some problems with regard with the Georgian case, of course, to continue about creeping occupation, and also just to reach about Baku-Tbilisi pipeline, because due to this creeping occupation scenarios, Georgia lost its control over the main pipeline connecting Baku with Supsa. So Baku-Supsa pipeline, unfortunately, is under the Russians and South Ossetian separatist military forces control, and it's also get ousted of this just about project, transit project, just consideration, just about opportunities. So I guess Russia could continue this so-called opportunistic and militarized hawkish policy toward Georgia in order just to somehow get influence of the Trump road just about a provisional case, or even just about block Georgia from abilities to get involved Georgia from realization of the East-West transit corridor potential development. I would like to mention when this, I would like to give you one historic just about memory. In 1998, when of course this Baku-Tbilisi-Jaykan oil pipeline was underway to be constructed and to be just about finished by 1999. In 1998, by then Georgian President Eduard Shevardnadze, he was attacked. A terrorist terrorist attack was conducting against Georgian president.
Thank you very much, Bakhtan. Our time is over. Bakhtan Maisaya and Murad Muradov, thank you very much for sharing your insights with us. We greatly appreciate your time and expertise. That's all we have for now. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to A News for more.